you have, let's say, properties, an asset of $1 million, let's say, and you do this, it's under your kid's name, and your kids are going to sell it. What happens? Do the kids have to pay also state tax? Not when you do transfer tax, not when you sell it, but for example, capital gain. Do they have to pay for it too, the kids, the family?
Yeah. Okay. So
that's a question that you can answer.
Estate tax, it depends on the state. So there's no federal estate tax in New York, federally, unless your value of your estate is over $5 million for an individual or $11 million for a married couple. So if your house is only $1 million, there's no federal estate tax. Same with the state. The state of New York, in each state sets whether there's an inheritance or an estate tax. New York doesn't have one unless it's over a certain amount. I think it's 2.5 million. So for most people, there's no estate tax. If there is, ideally you put your assets into a trust. And sometimes there's ways to avoid the estate tax when you put your assets into a trust. So if you are what we would consider more of a high net worth, having a high net worth estate, you're going to want to talk to an estate planning attorney about how to protect against these taxes. As for capital gains, that's a tricky one. I mean, that's really more for an accountant to talk about, but the basics is if I buy my house in 1980, that's the value I paid for it. If I give it to my child during my lifetime, that's a transfer, and that's going to create a capital gains tax based on that original purchase date. And that could be very high. However, if my child inherits it because I did a will or a trust, they can avoid the capital gain and they get what's called a step-up basis. So through the inheritance, they get to step up to the date of death. So that could be like 30 years difference. And so now the date of death becomes the value. And so if I sell it a year later, there's really not necessarily any capital gains. So that's a really great question. And it's complicated, but most people think, hey, I can avoid probate if I just add my child to the deed. And that way they automatically inherit, which legally is true. It's an automatic transfer, but it doesn't protect against the capital gains. It doesn't give them the step-up basis.
Right. And with capital gain, we know how much money you end up paying with capital gain.
Oh, God, it hurts. Yes.
Now, I know you were telling me that with the estate, you would not have to pay the federal state. Do you know if they have to pay the city, or you're not sure? Because, New York City.
I don't think there's a city inheritance tax.
Okay.